Hi everybody, welcome back to the Robinson Curriculum course. So in this video, we're going to talk all about math. We're going to really dive into it, get into the specifics. So let me start by, first of all, I'm sorry because I got sick in between taping these and my voice is still not 100%, so I apologize for that, but I wanted to finish this course. So let's go into, I want to show you what 5-4 starts with. This is the first book that the Robinson Curriculum recommends that you start with. Not Saxon 1, not Saxon 2 or 3, and I have a video on my review of Saxon 1. And as you can see from that video, that Saxon 1 program, and I'm sure many others that you might have tried in the past, it is a lot of busy work. So we're going to talk about where exactly does 5-4 pick up and what you can do to prepare them that is very simple, very effective, and very inexpensive. Okay, so what exactly does 5-4 start with? Well, it is just review of addition and missing add-ins, part 1. So we have 4 plus 3, 4 plus 3 plus 5, and then we get to probably the most challenging part of this first lesson is 4 plus n equals 7. So if they can solve for the missing add-in here, 7 plus n equals 10, if they can solve for that, that's where lesson 1 starts with. Lesson 2 goes on to 3 add-ins. 5 plus 3 plus q equals 9. Solve for q. So how can you help prepare your child for this level, getting to Saxon 5-4? The best way is obviously learning their numbers, counting, just counting to 100, learning their math facts. And that is what the Robinson Curriculum recommends, is that prior to starting 5-4, they have all their math facts memorized. And the way the Robinson Curriculum equips you with this is giving you math fact flashcards. It's included with the CDs and it's also included online. You can print them out and use them. If you want to make them a little sturdier, you can laminate them. Now, some parents don't want to go through all that time and trouble of printing them out and folding them, organizing them, laminating them. So if you purchase the RC Lifetime Complete Bundle, you get pre-made math flashcards there. Or you can just purchase them yourself on Amazon. They are very inexpensive, any place really online, even some dollar stores, Dollar Trees carry them. So we just have addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. I also have this one, numbers 1 to 100, that I use with the younger children just starting out counting, and we do that. Now, what if you feel like they need a little bit more? Now, if you feel like they need a little bit more, you want a little bit more, then online, RC Online also has Raise Arithmetic. And I think Raise Arithmetic, and this is something that you can find open source, probably also online for free. I think it's just a great foundation, and I do use it with my children. Lesson 1 is counting from 1 to 10, and then it's broken up lesson 2, 3, and 5 by just counting from 11 to 40, and then the next one is counting from 41 to 70, and then we kind of get to numbers to read. And I think this is very helpful to make sure that the children can read the numbers. They're not getting 21 and 12 mixed up. So I think that's a great foundation. And then numbers to be written, you kind of go over it and have them write the numbers you tell them. And then there's just oral exercises. How many are 5 and 1? So it goes, the first book goes through addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. So if you want a little bit more than just memorizing math facts, I just recommend this, Raise Arithmetic, the first book. It's fantastic. I wouldn't really recommend, like I said, going into Saxon 1 or other curriculums, their first book, second book. If you'll see, it is just a lot of busy work, shading in this and drawing number problems, and you have to sit there, unless they're a very strong reader, you're sitting there with them and doing it. Where I think your time could be better spent just focusing on the basics, just focusing on helping them get their numbers down, counting, and their math facts. And you can also go over time and money, but that is also going to be covered in the Saxon books. So you don't have to cover that if you want to, if you have flashcards for that, but it is also going to be in the books. Now let's talk about other ways to help with the math facts, because some parents get frustrated with this. Their kids are just not picking up. They're tired of flashcards. So I'm going to give you some additional recommendations, other parent favorites, and it's up to you if you want to add any of this, but really all you need is just the math facts. All you need are just flashcards to accomplish this. But if you're looking for a little bit more, the Flashmaster is a great tool, very handy. I talked about this in earlier videos where you can do all the math operations, and you can choose the level of hardness for them, plus addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and you can check here, you can change it if you want a time limit or no time limit. So this is great repetition, and it's fun for the kids. Something a little bit different than just flashcards, right? So that's something. We also really like addition the fun way, or times tables the fun way. They have cute little stories that remind you of your math facts. For example, 6 times 8 is 48. This one is, remember, when it's 6 times 8, 6 is the chef, and the cake is in the shape of an 8, and the cake is 48. 48. 6 times 8 is 48. So that's, I also mentioned the RC mom, Liz, who does these great little old-fashioned type worksheets where you can check them off, maybe offer an incentive for each sheet that they memorize. They get something, a little treat or a quarter. The way she recommended that you use them is if they master all the math facts, then they get to color the animal on the bottom. But like some kids maybe want a little bit more, maybe a little incentive. It's up to you. Now, obviously, RC recommends no electronics until the age of 16. However, if you do want to make an exception to use something online to help them get their math facts memorized, a great website is Extra Math, and they have an app for your phone. I think it's only for $5. You can add as many children as you want. The website is free. Like I said, the app is a very small charge. You can add as many kids. And it really is a great tool to memorize your math facts, because there's different things, racing against the teacher, or just placement to see where you're at. All the operations, all the math facts are there. And if you get a problem wrong, it gives you the answer. And so it will keep giving you the same problem until you type in the right answer. So that is really helpful. I do like to use it myself sometimes, even though my kids don't have phones, don't have tablets, because I see it as just a short period of time with an end time frame, with an end goal. We're just using this tool to get the desired results that we want, them having all their math facts memorized and ready to start 5-4. So I see it as just a temporary allowance, and I'm there with them, watching them. I'm keeping track of all of it. And you can only do so much in a day, and then it stops, and then it tells you you just have to come back another day. So it's not something that you could just keep going with for hours. There's just a short time frame per day that you're doing these drills, and then you move on. So that's Extra Math if you want to check that out. All right, so let's go back and talk about the Saxon books a little bit more. What if you have an older child and you don't know where to start them, where to place them? There is a placement test, and I will link that in the description of this video, where you can have your child take it and see where they're at. Something kind of cool that I heard recently was that, it's a second edition by the 2 dots. If there's no dots, then it's the first edition. So that's something that you can kind of keep an eye out when you're trying to track down answer keys. It's very important that you have the right answer key for the right book. There's a couple of books where the same answer key works for a couple different editions, but you really have to be careful with that. Check with somebody who's really knowledgeable in this area. There's a couple places like Bibliomania and Covenant Homeschool Resource Centers where you can call them, and they are a wealth of information. They have older editions, older answer keys, and they can help you. So I recommend that you call them or message them on Facebook. But yes, you want to make sure that you have the right answer key. One thing that I do want to mention about the answer keys is if you have the book and you just can't find the answer key, there are some apps now where you can scan the problem in the book and it will give you the answer. Or I'm sure there's websites where you could type in the problem and it'll give you the answer. So that's just last resort, but that is a tool that's available to you. Another alternative, and I'm actually kind of a fan of this, is getting the teacher's manual, because the answers are in the back of the teacher's manual. And I like this because it's less to track and have space for if you're in a smaller home, and these can get lost or separated, and if they're hard to find, then you might be in a jam. But having the teacher's edition, they're there. The answers are always there with you. Now, some parents might be concerned with cheating, whether having it like this, where they can see the answers in the back, or if they correct themselves. Typically, children correct themselves with RC. My children do. Some parents might be concerned about cheating, and really, that is a problem that is outside the scope of this curriculum. If that's an issue, then that's something that you probably have to stop homeschooling for a moment and deal with that, because that is obviously a critical component to a self-taught curriculum, right? So that's something that you would have to deal with. However, as long as children know that cheating, dishonesty is just not tolerated, period, not acceptable in your home, then it will be fine, obviously. My children do correct themselves, and I have a rule where if they get 5 or more wrong on that lesson, then they need to redo the lesson the next day. I feel like they have not mastered it. If they get 4 or less wrong and they correct them and fix all their mistakes and match them up to the answer key, then they can move on to the next day. That's the way we do it here at our house. You might have a different rule, but I think that's a good rule of thumb. 5 or more, you need to redo the lesson. I don't make them redo it the same day. They're obviously tired. The lesson probably wore them out. They really gave it their all. They didn't master it. I couldn't imagine having them do it again that same day. They wait the next day, sleep on it, right? Think about it, and then the next day start fresh and try the lesson again. Now, to talk a little bit more about this whole self-correcting issue, I just want to share with you a little bit of my experience doing it this way and the positives, the benefits that I have seen. Now, I know my children don't like telling me if they got a lot wrong, if they got 10 wrong or however many problems. So I just ask them, how do you do? Sometimes, when I remember to ask them, and they'll tell me, I did great, I passed. Or they'll just say, I'm going to redo the lesson the next day. And I don't pry anymore. I don't, well, what did you do wrong? What are you doing? How many did you get wrong? I don't. I say, okay, I'll try again tomorrow. That's great. That's fine. There's no rush. There's no time set to when they have to complete this. I'm not pressuring them that, well, you have to complete this textbook before summer starts. There's nothing like that. It's at their own speed. So if they need to do a lesson a few times, it's no big deal. It's fine. Let them work it out. And I sat with them recently while I was planning these videos, and I asked them, what's the most times that you've had to redo a lesson? And one of them told me, I think it was 4 or 5 times she redid the same lesson. This is when she was starting fractions. And fractions can be difficult for some children. And for a second, I felt a little bit bad. Like, wow, she must have been really frustrated during that time, redoing that same lesson 5 times. And was I a bad mom because I didn't step in and help her? But then obviously she figured it out on her own. She mastered it, and she went on to the next lesson and the next lesson. And obviously she's much farther down the road now than when she was at that lesson. And she did it herself. She just kept going at it, and she figured it out. She got the problems right. And that's obviously a great self-confidence booster for young children. So it can seem hard to moms sometimes to not help them and seeing them redo a lesson maybe several times, but it's okay. That's how it's supposed to work. And she hasn't had another lesson where she's had to redo it so many times like that, but she might get to another really hard point, and that will happen again, but it's okay. I'm just here to tell you, it's okay. Let them figure it out on their own. Okay, but let's talk about when intervention might be needed, when you have to step in and help. And I'm going to give you some suggestions on how to do that in the most productive way first, keeping in spirit with the whole self-taught method. So let's say a child is just not getting it, it's very frustrated, same problem over and over. Maybe they're sure that their answer is correct and that the book is wrong, the answer key is wrong, or they're just really frustrated, they need your help, maybe they've done the lesson a few times. So here's some suggestions. Number one is have them read the problem out loud to you. 95% of the time where we have had an issue like this, where they were just so adamant that the book was wrong and they were right, or they're just not understanding it, 95% of the time it was just user error. They had just written the wrong number down. They were maybe thinking 40 instead of 400 or 14 or some kind of an error like that. And when they read it out loud to you, normally that's when they have their aha moments, like, oh, it was just the numbers were wrong. And then they work the problem and they get it right. So that's one thing that you could do. Just have them read it out loud to you. If that's still not working out, then have them read the actual lesson to you, the whole lesson, the whole beginning, introduction, whatever it's teaching you. Have them read it out loud to you. Maybe there's something that they're not reading right or understanding. That's something that you could do. Also, I'm kind of a fan of the second edition books, because if you look at the problem, like number 16, there's little parentheses and it has the number 39, if you could see it right there, see? So that tells you that the way to work that problem is in lesson 39. So then you can have the child go back to lesson 39 and read it, or read that problem and read that lesson. So I like the second edition for that fact. Now, another method that I use, if all that didn't work and we actually have to go to the problem and work the problem out, I'll put the problem on the board and then I'll have them guide me what I have to do. And more often than not, that's where the answer becomes evident, what they were doing wrong. So I have them walk me through it. What am I supposed to do next? And then after that, and then after that. And usually they figure it out at that point. Now, let's talk about math tests. I don't do them here at our house because I don't really see the point in them. They don't move on into the next lesson unless they get fewer than 5 errors. So to me, that's showing me that they've mastered it and they fix the errors that they get wrong before they move on. So I don't really see the point in a math test. Now, obviously, in a public school setting, I can see why they would have tests, just because there's so many students and you don't know who's really doing the work at home, and you don't want to move on to something harder if majority of the class is still stuck on this more basic concept. So I understand tests in public school setting, but in a homeschool setting where each child is at their own speed in their own book, nobody's holding them behind, nobody's pushing them ahead, I don't see the need for the tests. But some parents do, and you can get the test for the books and you can have your own rules set up, where if they don't have this much percentage right, maybe you don't move on to the next book, then you're going to probably have to add some review. Or I just see it as more work for yourself, adding more things. If you just want them to have that test practice for whatever reason, there's other ways to do it. For example, we have the Iowa testing here. Any homeschooler can sign up for it. So there are other alternatives rather than just frequently having tests at home. But it's up to you as a parent, obviously, how you want to approach that. Now, the recommendation with the RC program is that they do math for 2 hours. I use a timer like this from Big Lots or the dollar store, wherever you find one, all the time. It only has an hour limit on it, but once it rings, we can just roll it to the next hour. And I give my children the choice. If they complete a lesson and they don't have to redo it, they can move on to the next lesson. Just keep going for the 2 hours. Or they can work on their math facts, and maybe they're in division and they feel that working on their multiplication math facts can really help them out for the next lesson, then I'm fine with that. As long as they're spending about 2 hours on math and they're doing at least one lesson a day. Maybe they had a really hard lesson and they didn't master it, and it's just one of those things where you need to just put the book away until the next day when you start fresh and start over. Then that's a great time to, again, just work on math facts. I know some parents have different ways of doing the math component of it. Maybe they just do one lesson a day and that's it. I think a good rule of thumb is at least doing one lesson a day. So what if you have a child that just sits there for the whole time. Maybe you decided on 1 hour or 2 hours and they're just kind of running out the clock. They're just sitting there staring at it. Then what can you do? Well, I think a great recommendation that I've heard for that is to just make them do 1 lesson a day. No matter how long it takes them, they're going to sit there until at least 1 lesson is complete. Now, if it's a very hard lesson for them, maybe you just want to do half a lesson. You obviously know your child best and where they're at. So maybe it is just half a lesson because it's really hard, or maybe you know that they can do that full lesson and they're just trying to run the clock out. It's just a disciplinary thing. It's up to you, but I think that is a good rule of thumb to just have at least 1, especially in these earlier books, to at least have 1 lesson done per day. So that's going to motivate them to not just run the clock out. Okay, and the last thing that I want to talk about when it comes to math is using other programs. So let's say you really like the RC method, but you really don't like Saxon Math. And look, I can really relate to you on this because I had a similar experience, and so I'll share with you kind of our journey and what happened and how we ended up back with Saxon Math. So I understand there could be some frustration. Some parents don't like Saxon Math. And the first thing that I want to talk about that is they might not be ready for it. They need to be strong readers and be really solid on their math facts. So if they're getting to that first lesson of 5-4 where they're solving for n, and they're not a very strong reader yet to read the lesson that explains it, or they don't know their math facts to really kind of figure this out quickly, you're going to have a hard time. And then that's when you might start to look for other things. So I would recommend first just go back to the basics, take a break, make sure they're a strong reader, get them really firm on that. Maybe use the Alpha Phonics that comes with RC Online. Just make sure they're really firm on that. And make sure they're really firm on their math facts. If you need a brief, intense period of just going over math facts, no matter how old the child is, it's okay. It's going to be easier for when they start 5-4. That was my mistake when I first started 5-4, probably with a child that was way too young for it. And there was a lot of frustration, a lot of tears on everybody's parts, my part, her part. And so then we tried other things, right? And so I just want to caution you when you try other things. For example, there's a video on my channel where we did RC with Life of Fred. Now, Life of Fred is fun. You cover kind of other subjects also. I mean, it's great. We really enjoyed it. However, here was the problem. I was reading it out loud to them because they were not strong enough readers yet, which, you know, I enjoyed it because I liked it. I liked the stories as well. I actually bought the calculus book just so that I could read the beginning story of Fred, right? But as time went on, I realized that they needed a little bit more than just the row of practice or whatever. So then I started supplementing with Tiger Math, which Tiger Math are great little self-guided workbooks. But I just saw how, I'm just kind of adding more. I've traded this more simplistic way that RC recommends, which is children do math on their own, completely on their own, correcting themselves. I exchanged that for me reading to my kids a math book, math program, and then I'm not sure that they're really getting all the concepts, and then getting more workbooks, spending more money on other workbooks and making sure that they do that. And so I realized, is this really the most efficient way to do this? And then I realized when we started Saxon 5-4 again, that there were gaps. And that was really hard for me because I really wanted to champion Life of Fred. I really love that different method of doing math. And if that works for you, then great. Here's just my recommendation. Whatever you do, just stick with it, because each program, each math program is different. And so if you're going to do Rod and Staff, then probably do Rod and Staff all the way. And if you're going to do Life of Fred, then really do Life of Fred. Maybe they can read it to themselves. But what I'm saying is when you switch from Life of Fred to Saxon or another program, there's going to be some gaps because it's just meant to continue with that same program. That's it. Maybe something that was missing with Life of Fred is taught later on in another book, but then I switched to Saxon. That assumes that you've already had that. So you know what I mean? Just whatever you pick, stay with it. However, if it's not working, then switch. All I'm trying to say is that the RC Saxon way, how it comes in the program, how it's intended to be used, is very simple and it works. If you just prepare for it correctly, it's going to be great. A lot of the questions and frustrations that I see online is because they didn't take the time to set that foundation up really strong with the reading and the math facts, and then they're trying something else, and then from the something else they're trying to jump on to Saxon 5-4, and it causes a lot of stress. So if you want to do rod and staff, do rod and staff. If you want to do raised arithmetic all the way through, hey, it's there in the RC bonuses. You wouldn't have to buy any math books. It's all there for you. You can print out each book. Then do that. All I'm trying to say is that when you switch from program to program, especially something that's very different, like Life of Fred and Saxon Math, very different approaches, then you're going to have a hard time. There's going to be frustration. So either bite the bullet and take the time to set up the foundation for 5-4, or stick with whatever program you choose that you enjoy all the way through. But again, if it's not working out, like for me, it wasn't working out with Life of Fred. I didn't like the time that I was investing in it and then the money I was investing to supplement or do other things. Then obviously course correction, change courses, like I changed to Saxon and implementing it the right way, and I see the tremendous results. So that's all I'm trying to say. And I'm not even talking about Saxon 1, Saxon 2, Saxon 3. I don't think it's necessary to do those. Just to have your math facts really down and being a strong reader. I think we've covered all about math, the math component in a typical RC day. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below, and I will have links to all the products that I have mentioned in the notes below and also in a handout that's easily clickable. The links are easily clickable. So now we're going to move on to the next step, which is writing. So I'll see you at that video.